My name's Kirsten Jones and I'm an artist. I used to do a lot of drawing, and it was my way of escaping into my own imagination. I think when you're doing lots of little drawings and it's your way of occupying yourself, it becomes a means of expression, and I think that was probably the earliest time. But honestly, the real moment, I think, was probably foundation. When you go to foundation, you are told that you need to bring a certain amount of kit and you have to get sort of organise yourself before you go there on your first day, and it basically comes down to the list. The list gave you loads of amazing materials that I didn't know anything about. It gave you you had to buy a box, and then you had to arrange all those materials in the box. It's just paradise, and I wanted paradise forever. And I woke up and I looked out there, and there's an amazing plant in the garden that I bought in an RNLI sale, and had a really interesting conversation with the guy who had grown it. It was beautiful. And I looked at it and the sun was shining and it was just electric. It just looked so fabulous. I thought, right, I'll just do a quick sketch of that in the garden. And 3 days later, and 3 pieces later, it's sort of defining my my year ahead. I think the hardest thing about being an artist is when you can't always live off your work. You have to do other things and make a living. And I have done lots of different jobs along the way. All of them have been interesting in their own, type of way, and most have been in the art world because I've always made an effort. I always needed to be in there somehow. And I think one of the ones that the point that I would probably reference as a challenge was I did a really great job in as a cultural attaché in the corporate world, and it was fantastic. It was great. It was working with techie computer people and bringing art into their world and having a creative response to a work environment. It was very inspiring. But the difficult bit about that is that I think when you're so engrossed in something, you can only do one thing really, really well, and I was giving that my all and my painting wasn't really happening. So you kind of have to be honest and think, right, I'm only going to do this when I'm really giving it everything. And when when you can't do that, it's quite hard because your art has to go on the back burner. So that's, so I did. I left it for a little while. I've sort of learnt to embrace the darkness a little bit as well over the years, so I think that's important as well. You have to have a bit of a backdrop. In order to see the sunshine, you need the shadows, and I think certainly in the current, I'm sort of looking at this piece and it's becoming, I'm enjoying that actually, and I think you can't be fluffy all the time. It's quite fluffy most of the time, not all the time. I've learned to keep going, and I know when to move on, and that goes with paintings. When a painting or you have to acknowledge your mistakes, I think, and kind of just, I don't ever regret anything. I think you have to sort of move forward in a positive way. With painting, there are always ones that just don't really go right, and I think if you look at the artwork, you can kind of tell why. It's either because you're not doing it for the right reasons, or you're not really concentrating, or you're actually trying to do something when you really should be doing something else. That's what I mean about go with your heart. And so I've got a sort of ritual where if something really does go badly wrong and I really can't look at it anymore, it only happened a few times in my life, I tend to burn them. I put them in the wood burner and have a sort of like goodbye ceremony. I kind of say goodbye to it and think, okay, that's done, now let's go back to the book. I think I'm showing my perspective on a series of different viewpoints and themes. So it's almost like channeling your life really. And if your life is about, on that morning, it might be something as simple as a really great cup of coffee, but it's interesting and great enough to want to communicate that and identify it as a moment in time, then drawing your coffee cup is a good place to start. If that is a walk down the garden, or a day in the garden, or an hour on a beach, or a year in France, or 3 months in China, whatever that might be, it's I communicate where I am at that time, and I try to capture the essence of a moment, or a time, or a thing, and hopefully people find that interesting. I think also it's important to say that when I do the art, I don't think it's all about me. I think everybody sees something different, and the joy is because I leave gaps in there, I leave the negative space, there's room for interpretation, and I think people enjoy finding their own stories, and I always love hearing what people say. Oh, I remember this, it reminds me of that, and that's kind of why I do it. That's a big purpose. It's about the viewer as well, as much as anything, I think. Yeah. So Sweetshop is about, it was painted at quite a tricky time in my life, but I think it's essentially about everything. It's such an important piece for me, because it's got everything in it. It's got life, it's got darkness, it's got happiness, it's got protection, ideas, childhood, future, memory, beauty, fun. It's just great, and I think at the time I was capturing everything that was important to me, and sort of all the people around me. I was asking people questions about new friends and old friends, about their idea of a sweet shop. It's such a nostalgic, but it's also quite a modern concept in a way, the idea of life in compartments, and for me, I feel like it's such a key point. I think I've started it, and I've put it and I've framed it, and the work that's come from that, there's a lot that's happened from it. So it's actually one of my favourite pieces I've ever made. And if there was ever a justification, if there's ever a statement that said, good things come from challenging moments, then this piece is it. If somebody else ever owns this piece, then I think it'll bring them a lot of love and a lot of happiness as well. I do still see the same things coming, that right from the beginning really. There's a lot of threads that weave through my work, and I was just thinking today about this new piece, and when you sand back on gesso you get tiny scratches, and I was thinking it looks like linen, and the neutral tones, and I've always, the idea of fabric and surface and to some extent garments, I think has always been in my work, and how we present ourselves, and I think just touches of even my really early work. I still think, oh yeah, I remember you. You're still there. Especially when I look back through my books, my books are like a kind of the record of my life in a lot of little A5 parcels. I think that's the joy in it, because the people that are with me at any point in time are always, they're kind of in there as well. And if I travel to a country, or I take a walk down the road, that journey is there. So it's me, but me in a context, and depending on what I'm thinking about at the time, or what's happening around me at the time as well. So it's very current, and but hopefully contemporary, and hopefully it stands the test of time.